Good morning, everyone. This is Kathy Mason from Mason Works Marketing here on Conscious Business Zone with my new friend Leonard Perlmutter, and he's also called Ram Lev. Is that right?
Close enough, Ramlev.
Ram Lev. Okay, I guess the pronunciation is incorrect. I am so excited to meet Leonard because of his work and his dedication to the upliftment of humanity and the empowerment of us all. And he just wrote a wonderful book called Your Conscience, The Key to Unlock Limitless Freedom or Wisdom and Creativity and Solve All of Life's Challenges. And that's a big offer. So I'd love to have you start today's conversation, if you would, telling a little bit about yourself and then talking about your conscience. So could you tell how you got into this journey for yourself? Because you've been doing this for a long time.
I have really my whole life. Uh, and I think the two principles that have directed my journey since early childhood is, first of all, I've always been very philosophically oriented.
Mhm.
It's just the way I saw the world. So I was philosophical, but also extremely practical.
Good.
If it didn't have a practical application, I didn't give it too much energy. So I was into philosophy and practicality. And at an early age, I combined the two of them and I became a Cub Scout and then a Boy Scout.
Oh, perfect.
And it was a lovely way of learning practical information, practical tools for life. In fact, one day was having a conversation with my scoutmaster, and I said to him, scouts have a motto, be prepared, but I'm a little confused. What should we be prepared for? And he looked at me and he said, well, how would I know? And isn't that the truth? How would we have known what we would be dealing with in 2020 or 2021 way back when? So life is a thrill a minute. Are we prepared for it? Do we have the tools for it? And that's why in February of 2020, when I began a quarantine because of the COVID, I could not visit with my students. I had to stop the classes. And I was asking myself and contemplating, well, then with this COVID quarantine situation, how am I to serve? And what I came up with is that I need to give people a gift because I could see on through TV and media uh, uh, reports that people were in a tremendous amount of pain because they did not have the right bag of tools
Right,
to have access to
right,
turn a catastrophe into a blessing of
right.
sorts. And so, what could I give them? And I said to myself, the best tool I could give them is an understanding of their own conscience, because the conscience for me has been a game changer.
Well, I think what I loved about your book, which we'll be talking about in a moment, you do have an incredible talent for making the abstract usable. I think that's when you listen to poetry or read poetry, you get the feeling of it, but then it's difficult to implement. You can stay in that feeling, but to talk about it, you're able to use a linear. It's almost linear process to access this space that is a feeling space, really.
That's right. That's right. That's the practical nature of my personality. because esoterica for esoterica's sake never did much for me. I mean, I too had those feel-good moments, but gosh, they dissipated in the midst of changing circumstances. I wanted something that never changed.
Right. Well, it's a worldview. And what you do, honestly, is take people by the hand so they can be empowered to have their connection restored. Because what you're saying when you're talking about the media and the fear, I think it's a fear pandemic
Yes, it is. Yes,
that
that's
we've
true.
been through. The only thing you can be sure about is this is your own essence and expressing it. And as you said, also is I think we are designed to serve. I think that's our human thrust, our potential. And so by you wanting to serve right away in this time of change, you're one of the gifts that hopefully people will unwrap during this time.
Well, I often think of the consciousness of a cell in search of an organ to serve a higher purpose.
Yeah,
And that's us. We are just like a cell looking for an organ to be in service to a higher purpose. And for me, the conscience has been able to suggest to me the thought to think, the word to speak, and the action to take that will provide me that rewarding and meaningful purpose in life.
beautiful. So, could we talk a little bit about the limitless wisdom that you refer to in your title and in the book? Um, that limitless wisdom, some of the philosophies or the science actually talks about the field that you're in, and it's in the field, and you're like an antenna pulling it out of the field. How do you see this?
Well, I see it pretty close to that,
Okay,
Kath. Uh, the conscience, our conscience, is one of four functions of the mind.
right,
We'll talk about the others in a moment, but let's just concentrate on the conscience.
perfect.
The conscience is the only function of the mind that can discriminate, determine, judge, and decide. Now, when I learned that and I began to practice it, it was a game changer for me because what it meant was every single choice that I have ever made in my life and every single choice that I will make in my life has been and always will be made by the conscience. So it is the conscience that tells us what's to be done and what's not to be done. And when we actually listen to it and employ its wisdom, we feel better.
Right.
And when we don't, well, we might feel some passing pleasure initially, but it always leaves pain in its wake.
Interesting.
Mhm. So the conscience is critically important because remember, the mind moves first and the body follows. I can't even lift my hand without first entertaining a thought.
Mhm.
So thoughts are our most powerful resource. And it's the conscience which has the capacity, just like a mirror, to reflect perfect wisdom all the way to the center of consciousness from the superconscious portion of the mind.
Okay.
And the conscience can then reflect that superconscious wisdom and bring it back into the matrix of our mind body sense complex and bring it into our conscious mind so that we can be consciously aware of this superconscious wisdom that we were not aware of before. And that is the wisdom that will tell us the thought to think, the word to speak, and the action to take that will always, always, always lead us for our highest and greatest good.
So how do you get to this space when you're in fear? Because the strongest effect of this whole period of time has been fear of death or fear of loss. And I actually the other day was starting to feel the sadness of the loss of the old world, even though I know we need to change and go to this new world that works better. But how do you get to the conscience when you're in sadness?
Well, you bring up the classical a challenge that we all have as human beings, and those challenges originate in the other three functions of the mind. You see, there's four of them. Now, only one of them can make a decision. So that means the other three functions of the mind uh, only can advise. Okay, they are only advisors or counselors. And chief among them is the ego. We talk about fear. The ego is hardwired to the reptilian brain. So the ego does the bidding of the reptilian brain. And what does the reptilian brain concentrate on? Oh, the reptilian brain, and therefore the ego, is all about self-preservation. I don't want to die. I don't want the form to die, whatever the form is. I don't want it to die. And the ego and the reptilian brain both have an intense fear of annihilation.
Right.
So any form of change is seen as threatening. Any change is seen as threatening. So the ego, doing the bidding of the reptilian brain, appears in every relationship. It's like one of these TV commentators, color commentators, doing all sorts of an analysis of every relationship that we have. And the ego says in every relationship, it sort of cuts the relationship in half and says, oh, this is pleasant. I like this. It's good. Let's reprise it. But over here, oh, this is very unpleasant. I call this bad. I don't like it. Let's avoid it. But if we're honest with ourselves and we look back at our lives, that which has been pleasant is not always good for us.
Right.
That which is unpleasant isn't always bad for us.
Right.
So if my mind simply listens all the time to the limited perspective of the ego,
Yeah.
I'm going to wind up in pain.
Right.
So it's critically important to understand that the ego is not always wrong. Right now, on your program and speaking to everybody, I need a healthy ego.
Right.
I need a healthy ego to drive an automobile. But that limited perspective is often faulty, even though the ego is never in doubt. The ego is loud, it's pushy, it's insistent. So that's the ego.
Right.
But there are other functions of the mind similarly, like the senses. Now, the senses take our creative energy out into the world. They're sort of an importer and an exporter. So out goes our creative energy through our eyes and our nostrils and our mouth and our ears and our hands and our feet to look and smell and taste and listen and touch in a desperate attempt to find some object, some relationship that's going to bring me happiness, that's going to bring me security, that's going to bring me health. And so, if the truth be known, the senses only see the front of every situation. They never see the back. So it's all about the glitter. It's all about the sizzle, not about the pain. So the senses enjoy just taking our creative energy to look and smell and taste and hear and touch. But they're always looking for this pot of gold at a rainbow that never brings them a pot of gold.
Right.
So they waste a tremendous amount of creative energy.
Mm.
And we need a lot of creative energy to fulfill the purpose of our lives, all these relationships that we have, these duties and responsibilities. How are we going to recapture that energy? Well, it's impossible, just like it's impossible to put toothpaste back in the toothpaste tube. Mhm. So what we need to do is we need to conserve, we need to discriminate more. And the conscience can discriminate. It's the only function of the mind that can discriminate
I see.
between passing pleasure and perennial joy. Mhm. So I need to train and parent the ego and its limited perspective. I need to train and parent the senses and their limited perspectives.
Mhm.
Not
Mm.
that the senses are always wrong. I
Mhm.
like a fine meal.
Yeah.
I like a delicious dessert. But if I just had an apple pie, a piece of apple pie, and that was great and I enjoyed it and I have no guilt, and the senses and the ego and the unconscious mind clamor for another piece of apple pie, maybe the conscience is going to say, well, you just had a slice of apple pie. Maybe the second slice is not to be taken.
Right.
And the unconscious mind, the unconscious is the third function.
Right.
It's the repository to everything we deem essential to our self-preservation. It's our memories, some are pleasant, some are not so pleasant, and our imaginations for the future. What if this should happen? What if this should happen? What if neither happens? Uh-huh. And so we have the ego and the senses and the unconscious mind, these loud, pushy, insistent voices creates a tremendous amount of noise in the mind. And when there's so much noise, the conscience, which will make the choice, cannot reflect perfect wisdom from the superconscious portion of the mind.
Interesting.
It loses that capacity because then now the noise is too loud.
Too loud. Yeah.
In that case, the conscience can only rubber stamp the limited, often faulty advice from the ego, senses, and unconscious mind. And that's what brings us the pain.
Wow. So the unconscious, I've always been told that it's 95% of the brain functioning and the conscious is only 5%. Is that correct?
Well, that's probably pretty close. I don't know what the exact numbers are, but that's about a good, healthy percentage. That's right.
So,
And the unconscious, Bruce Lipton, a cellular biologist, put this figure on it. The unconscious portion of the mind is 1,000,000 times more powerful than good intentions.
wow. So how do you feel about hypnotherapy or Bruce Lipton's work, which is kind of using the same kind of techniques? How do you feel about
Well, we're already hypnotized.
that? Programmed.
We
Yep,
are already programmed.
yep,
So what we need to be is dehypnotized
that's
and deprogrammed. That's my feeling.
yes,
And
me.
and we do that by doing experiments, teaching the ego, the senses, and the unconscious mind there's a better way to expand their consciousness, to expand the horizons from which they are looking. You see, uh, the ego, the senses, and the unconscious mind, which only have a limited perspective, it's sort of like looking outside your window. You can see a portion of your backyard, but you can't see your whole yard. You can't see the front of your house, that your front lawn, just a small portion through that window. But the conscience is sort of like on the roof of the house, has a 360-degree panoramic view, always knows what's to be done and what's not to be done.
So the path to working with your conscience and making that relationship highly functional.
Mhm.
Do you want to talk a little bit about that, please?
Sure, sure. So I have to become the parent. This
Yeah.
is my responsibility. Nobody taught us
Right.
about, nobody ever taught me about the functions of the mind, and that we have to coordinate them. The only thing that any of us really were taught in any form of school, any level, was to memorize
Right.
and then to recite something that you memorized. Then you get a degree.
Right.
And then you can get a better job, more money. But you're still enslaved to the faulty concepts and the loud, pushy voices of the ego, the senses, and the unconscious mind. So, not that it's bad to get a degree and to be able to earn a living and a nice, rewarding life, but there's so much more. And why be in all this pain? So, what we have to do is, here's what I do. So I'm not going to suggest what you do. I'm going to say what I do, and this has worked for me. So when I have a choice that's important, I make an appointment. So first thing I do, I make an appointment with the ego, the senses, the unconscious mind,
Oh, that's great.
and the conscience. And we all sit around the kitchen table and we have a conversation. Of course, I'm the moderator because I'm the parent. And so I say, all right, here's the situation. We just finished dinner. The question is, are we going to brush our teeth? So now I'm going to call on each of you so that each of you is received, because I love each of you. So ego, tell me, after dinner now, should we brush our teeth? What's your perspective? And the ego is going to say, well, I'm against it. That sounds terrible. It sounds very unpleasant. I don't like unpleasant things, so I vote no. Okay, well, thank you very much. And the senses, what is your opinion? Well, if I'm honest, and I generally try to be honest, uh, I enjoyed the meal, but I love the dessert because apple pie is my favorite. So, insofar as this brushing of the teeth, I'm against it, but I am in favor of a second piece of apple pie. Okay, well, thank you for your perspective.
Yeah.
You can sit down, and the unconscious. What do you have to say? Oh, I'm with the other two. I'm with the other two because that's my habit. Okay, well, thank you, unconscious. And now we're going to all sit quiet, and I'm going to ask the conscience to reflect super conscious wisdom and share this wisdom with us concerning brushing our teeth. Conscience, please advise us. Well, the conscience might say, we all know this life of ours is not a sprint. It's more like a marathon, a long marathon. And for a long marathon, we need healthy, strong teeth. We need healthy, strong gums. We need a healthy, strong immune system. And if we can just take a 2-minute time out, go into the bathroom, and experiment with brushing our teeth, that will provide us strong teeth, strong gums, and a strong immune system. And so I, as the parent, say, all right, let's all, for the sake of an experiment, you don't have to buy into this forever. This is just an experiment. We're all going to go in, we're going to brush our teeth, and then we're going to come back to the kitchen table and we'll discuss what we experienced. Okay, so we go in, we brush the teeth, we come back to the kitchen. And as the parent and moderator, I call on the ego. How was that? Well, I was surprised. What were you surprised about, ego? Well, I always equated any change with some form of death. So I had my reservations about this. I was against it in the first place, but it wasn't so bad, and I didn't die. I'm still here. That's right. We're still here. We've grown a little bit. Well, you could call it that. Okay. Well, thank you very much. Please sit down. Now, senses. What did you experience? Oh, I was surprised also. I was against it initially too, but when the tongue was gliding over my front teeth, I didn't feel that mossy feeling that I hate. And so I liked that very much. It was very pleasant. It still is when the tongue glides over my teeth. So thank you. And unconscious, what do you say? Oh, wasn't so bad. Wasn't so bad. Okay, so what has just happened? I, as the parent, have provided a seemingly insignificant, easy, no brainer of a change of habit for the ego, senses, and unconscious mind. And all three of them had a somewhat pleasant experience. So, what does that mean? Number one, it means that they now know on some very small level that change can mean growth rather than annihilation.
I see.
And they have a pleasant experience. So what does that mean in my relationship with the ego, senses, and unconscious mind? They trust me more than they did before, and they trust the conscience more than they did before. They
Interesting.
have they have something else in that memory bank in the unconscious that has recorded this experience. So then it's my job to find another easy experiment for them, and another one, and another one. Not too much. Don't take on too much too soon. And slowly, 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 their consciousness, their awareness will expand.
That's fantastic. So the time that you're taking to create this parenting exercise,
Yes.
is that a lot of time that you spend doing this? Is this a daily practice that you sit down with all the decisions I mean, because we're being thrown with decisions, every relationship creates a new decision.
Okay. So here's my reply to that.
Okay.
I remember when I was 15, going on 16, I learned to drive an automobile. It was scary. You know, it's a big, heavy machine, and I never had any experience with it. How much am I going to turn the wheel to the left? How much am I going to turn the wheel to the right? This is the whole process. I'm thinking about these things and I'm concerned about them. How much am I going to depress the gas so that I can start from this red light now that it's green, and I'm not, and the car's not going to jerk into the intersection? How much am I going to depress the brake in order to stop the car smoothly? And how am I going to possibly parallel park, right?
I still have trouble. Anyway.
So, so it was a challenge, but now I have a global skill. There's just driving. So initially, yes, when I meet with the ego, senses, and unconscious mind, it's a little unusual. It's a little cumbersome. It's a little time consuming, but that's why I pick small, seemingly insignificant no brainers to build a track record.
I
And
see.
slowly, slowly, we create a global skill. That's what human beings are excellent at. We are habit makers. It's just that many of the habits that are now stored in the unconscious mind don't work for us. Where do we get them? Oh, we got them at a lot of different places. I got some from mom. I got some from dad. I got some from grandma and grandpa and friends I went to college with, or and I some celebrities uh, taught me things, and politicians taught me things. Now they're on my hard drive,
Right,
uh-huh, and they're causing me nothing but pain.
right.
So now that I have a global skill, I can change the software of my mind.
Yes. And I think that's what we're being asked to do at this point is to look at all of those truths that we held dear and really look at them and see if they serve us anymore. Because when you started out your conversation, you talked about the cell, and you look at the human body or any mammal, and you look at how orchestrated and how beautifully each one of the cells work together. They don't fight. The liver doesn't fight the kidney, and the stomach doesn't fight the intestines. In fact, they're trying, if they're out of order in any way, they try to come back into alignment. And we need to do that as well. But we have some other, which I'm calling the unconscious or the subconscious. We have those programs that are, God bless our parents, they thought they were helping us be upstanding citizens by giving us all these patterns that they thought, because their parents gave it to them, would serve us. But they're really causing the pain, a lot of the pain.
So at a certain point in as we mature, we can see very clearly that mom and dad were not malicious, but as it turned out, they taught us many things to do, but also they tried their very best to teach us also what not to do, what not to do. And that's critically important. We criticize mom and dad or other people for teaching us what not to do, but by having on a relationship, either personal or secondary through the media, and observe somebody teach us what not to do, that's a wonderful learning. That's
Right.
a great teaching, and I should be very appreciative of that rather than criticizing.
Right, right. I think what happens though is that this world that we're in, which is in constant change and is totally global. There is nothing. I mean, you have been working with our Vedic school of medicine. You've been doing this for a long time, so you were international. Your reach and your teachings and all of your experience has been international. But a lot of people, this being forced into Zoom and forced into online, they had to get out of their maybe local area consciousness to to realize that we're all the same. We all want the good things for our family. We all want good health. We all want happiness and love, and that there really isn't anything to fear from the other. Um, although that is a practice almost.
Well, the fear of the other
Uh-huh.
occurs because I believe that I am a separate human being.
Right.
And that's just not true. It's not that I don't have a body. I have a body. It's not that I don't have a mind with thoughts, desires, and emotions. I do have a mind, but I am not the mind. Uh-huh. I am something other than that. And if I'm not the body and I'm not the mind, it begs the question, who am I? And from where have I come? And why am I here? And what's to be done? And where am I going to go when the body is no more? And so, in meditation and through the practice of experimenting with our conscience, slowly, 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 we annihilate the space between the two.
Right.
Mhm. Now, when you annihilate the space between the two, what's there to fear? Whom is there to fear if there's only one? But if you see yourself as an individual, continuously, essentially an individual, then there's always that space between the two. And in that space is fear. And fear always invites danger. You
Right.
know, you're walking along and you're passing a neighbor's house, and you're afraid of a dog. You're afraid of dogs, and the neighbor has a very loving, wonderful dog. But because there's fear in your mind, what is the first reaction from the dog?
It's Yeah, it feels you. Right. Right.
Why is this human being afraid? I'm not afraid. And my tail is wagging all of a sudden. So that tells the dog, oh my gosh, what do I have to fear?
Right, right, reflecting. Well,
Yes.
so this is kind of the question about the conscience and and creating being creative with the field. Could you talk a little bit more about that? Because it's almost like the law of attraction concepts, And it really is, everything begins with a thought. Michael Dooley says thoughts are things. I mean, there's a whole perspective about this. Could you speak to that, please?
Sure. So thoughts are our most powerful resource. And as it turns out, conveniently, there are really just two forms of thoughts. Uh, in Sanskrit, the ancient Indian language, they're called preya and shreya.
Okay.
So now the preya is some form of ego or sense gratification that conflicts with the superconscious wisdom brought to us by our conscience.
I see.
It conflicts with it. It's pleasant, it's comfortable, it's familiar. It's the ground upon which the ego, the senses, and the unconscious mind are currently standing. Mhm. And so it can bring passing pleasure, but in the wake of that passing pleasure, there's always some form of physical, mental, emotional, or spiritual dis-ease or pain.
I see.
And if we don't heed the lesson of pain at a low decibel level, oh, the decibel level just gets louder and louder and louder until the dis-ease becomes a disease. That's why we need to listen to the whispers of pain and use that as an insight that we need to make a mid-course correction to eliminate the friction in our life between outer action and inner wisdom. So that's preya. Mm-hmm.
Okay.
And so it leaves pain in, and it brings pain into our lives, even though there's a little buzz initially. The second kind of thought is the shreya. It's not so comfortable, it's not so familiar, it's not so attractive or initially pleasant, but it will always lead us for our highest and greatest good. So the conscience can tell us 24/7 which thoughts are shreyas, to be served in mind, action, and speech, and which thoughts are preyas, to be sacrificed. And I'll explain that in a moment.
Perfect. Thank you.
So when a thought is a shreya, something that has the good housekeeping seal of approval of our own superconscious wisdom through our conscience, it's always going to enable me to fulfill the purpose of my life without pain, without misery, and without bondage. But we have a lot of fear stored in the unconscious mind that comes forward and tries to manipulate this marionette, or anger, or selfish desires. That's the human condition. What do I do with these prayas that the conscience is saying it's a praya? If I serve these prayas, I'm going to be in pain. If I repress these prayas, I'm going to become neurotic and I'll be in even more pain. But no, there's another option, and that is sacrifice. So sacrifice, the word sacrifice comes from the Latin into the Italian, sacrifici, make it sacred. How do you make fear and anger and selfish desires, greed, sacred? Well, what is fear? What is anger? What is self-willed desire? Why, it's energy. If I asked you to communicate what anger is to you with your hand, well, you would probably turn it into a fist.
Right. Right.
Contractive energy. That's what it is. That's what anger is. It's just contracted energy. Same with fear. Same with greed. It's contracted energy.
Right.
And what do we learn in 5th grade? Oh, energy can't be created, can't be destroyed, but it can be transformed.
Right.
It can be transformed. We can transform ice into water and water into steam. So why not transform the contractive and debilitating energy of fear, anger, and selfish desire, these prayas that come into my awareness in the form of thoughts, desires, emotions? Why can't we transform that? And the answer is we can.
Right.
Well,
Right.
first of all, we have to sacrifice it. We have to offer it back to the origin from which it came. What is the origin from which it came? It's the origin from which everything came. All is one. We call that God. Okay, so somebody cuts me off in traffic. A stream of anger comes forward from my unconscious that I wasn't even aware of, and now it's in my conscious mind, so I'm aware of it. What am I going to do? If the more attention I give it, I'm
Yeah.
going to continue to poison my entire physiology, and I'm going to be in a whole lot of hurt. But if I take that anger and offer it back to God or to whatever concept of the supreme intelligence that you're comfortable with,
Mhm.
it will automatically be transformed simply by the act of sacrifice. And it'll be transformed into healing energy, an expansion of my willpower, and an increase in my access to the superconscious mind, which means I'll become more creative in every relationship.
Perfect. And how does breath work with all of this? Because I even while you're explaining this, I'm breathing. I'm feeling that's a big part of this.
Well, breath is a physical manifestation of the mind. We can't just will the mind to calm down from all the stress and anxiety that's agitating it.
Right.
But if we can learn, which we can very simply, to calm the breath, a calm breath automatically calms the mind.
Perfect.
And a calm mind is more inclined to parent the ego, the senses, and the unconscious mind to experiment with the superconscious wisdom of the conscience.
Perfect. This whole idea of creativity and co-creating at a high level with the superconscious, I just love it because I think that's where our problem solving skills will come for the future for humanity.
Yes.
And I think that the opportunity that you're giving people to, will you show your book now? To understand and be able to, yay, here we go, your conscience, the key to unlock limitless wisdom and creativity and solve all of life's challenges. How about that? Okay. So tell us more about how the journey to the book is kind of a wonderful starting place, but I think I'm gonna have to read it. I got my copy, thank you very much. And I think I'm gonna have to read it multiple times because each time I reread it and I got something different each time. So
Well, you get something different each time because you're different each time.
right,
It's not the same body that I had yesterday. The body is not a thing, it's a process. And same with the mind.
right.
We're constantly growing, growing, growing.
Right, right. Well, so how do you think this message can serve people? Do you think this is like a primer to get them started in understanding, or do you feel that this is like lesson one? Or how do you envision this book supporting people?
Well, if it acts in any way, it is uh, it would be to motivate them to experiment in their own lives
Wonderful.
with their own ego, senses, unconscious mind, to coordinate all three of them with their own conscience. You see, I don't want anybody who is listening to this, watching this, to believe anything that I have said. I really don't. I don't want you to believe anything I said. I want you to be a doubting Thomas. I want you to be a scientist. But if you're curious and you're interested, I would support you 100% if you decided to experiment with what you heard or what you will read in the book. I will support you 100% in that effort, because only by experimenting in coordinating the functions of the mind, ego, senses, unconscious mind, and learn to let your conscience be your guide, only then will you know the truth. And you know that you'll know. And you will become increasingly self reliant and self confident.
That,
And you won't be dependent on me as an author or a teacher. Uh-huh. But if I can offer something and it's in harmony with your own inner wisdom, then you'll know that that person that's making that suggestion is accurate, and you will know to accept it. And you will also know what not to do if this person is offering you something that's advising you to drive over a cliff.
well, the thing is this is self-empowerment, and there's all different ways for people. Some people will take a Western religion stance, but there's truth. Truth is available for people to find where they can take baby steps towards feeling better and having more personal power to meet with all of the changes. And change is good from my perspective. I ran a division of Arthur Anderson called the Change Enablement Group, and so I like change. If there isn't change, I kind of make it usually. So that's what I want people to know, that this book can really make a difference if you're ready to change. It's logical, it's linear, it's usable, and there is one chapter I wanted to suggest. There's chapter 7 is where do you start if you don't know where to start, and the quote is, waking up to who you are requires letting go of who you imagine yourself to be, from Alan Watts. And there's 7 different, I think there's 7, no, there's 10 different things in this chapter that give you experiments of what to do to help you take baby steps, basically, to prove it. Do you want to talk about that a little bit?
Well, these small steps are critically important. And first and foremost, what that does is it teaches us how to love ourselves, how to be kind to ourselves.
Right.
The ego wants to take on too much too soon. Yeah. And why? Because the ego, on some level, wants us to fail at this endeavor, so that it can maintain control
Oh,
over the city of life.
oh,
Mm. And so, if, for example, I'm in the afternoon of life, and I never really exercise that much, and I feel like I need some more muscle. Uh, well, if I've never done anything like exercising my muscles, the last thing I would want to do is to go to a gym and start picking up
wait,
100 pounds,
yeah,
or
crazy,
200 pounds.
crazy.
Uh, that would hurt me. That would not be kind. That would not be loving. But if I wanted muscles, I would just start with a couple of pounds. That's loving. And then after a couple of weeks, I'll add a couple more pounds. That's loving. And after a couple of months, I'll be lifting substantial weight, and I'll have muscles.
So you're saying about loving, and I think this is another subject that is really important to focus on or shed light on, is that by doing this practice and working with your conscience, you are actually loving yourself. This is the path to self-love. And we were, I believe, always intended to follow this path. And as we talked about before, some of the unconscious programs that we picked up from our environment led us to maybe not appreciating our own needs as well as others. And this is the time for us to rediscover that, because we all have these tremendous gifts to bring to the world. And if it's clouded under all the and I call it programming. Some people really dislike that, but I call it programming because I kind of see us like a computer, and we've got, the mom program, the dad program, the grandmother program, the aunt program, and they're all in there they were always trying to protect us, but there's time now to figure out what what your gift is, what your benefit, because this you came here as in a physical existence to express and expand consciousness, um, the cloud of consciousness.
And all of us are waiting for you out there to create this beautiful work of art because we need you to create it so
Beautiful.
that the entire organism can benefit from it. You
Perfect.
don't want to die with the music inside. Yeah.
Right. Well, and that is part of this whole journey that you're offering, is a way to, without a lot of discipline, but with just enough discipline to take back control of the spin of your life, which may be totally out of out of uh, order, um, and refocus that potent energy that may be going to fear or anger to beauty and harmony and love. That is a gift that you're offering, I think, Leonard. That's I just want to thank you so much for it.
Yeah. And in the process, we re engineer the software of our own mind and we transform the energy of stress in our lives into strength and creativity. It's beautiful. It's
Yeah.
just beautiful.
So once again, I do want you to say the gift. If you could say again that, because I really feel that's the whole reason why I'm doing this show, and I've been doing it for almost 3 years, is that I truly believe that every single person brought something that we need here. So could you repeat what you said? Because that was so perfect, or
Well,
something like it.
well, it's analogous to the cell and the organ. We all need each other, and I need you out there who happens to be hearing or watching uh, this broadcast to to work on your own instrument, to create your own beautiful work of art, whatever it is that you have been brought to this plane of existence to create. And then I and everyone else will benefit from it. So I will help you. I will endorse what you want to do, and I will help you. And your conscience will go a long way toward that because it's really about the mind. Our mind is the problem, and yet our mind is the solution. And that's the key. We have to use the mind to go beyond the mind, to change the software. We update our software all the time on our computer, but nobody taught us how to update the software in our mind. We have learned an awful lot, but nobody has taught us how to unlearn things we've learned.
Exactly, exactly. And this again is the time period we all chose to embody at this time, to
That's
be here during this huge time of change, which allows us all to see the world in a totally different way, instead of in a fearful way, but a land and a world of possibilities, and create co-creativity, co-creation. And so I just am, I again, Leonard, I'm so honored that you came on my show and that you share your wisdom. I want to make sure that everyone can get a hold of you, not only to get your book, but you have so many offerings on your site. And it is going along the banner. It's americanmeditation.org. But are there other ways that you would like the audience to know how to get a hold of you?
Well, yes, I teach at the Institute, the American Meditation Institute that I founded in 1996. And you're correct, the website is americanmeditation.org. And we have lots of wonderful programs. In fact, I'll offer every Sunday from 9:30 to 11 Eastern Time a free guided meditation. Uh, and on the homepage of americanmeditation.org, you'll see a link that you just click on, and it's free. And I do a guided meditation every Sunday morning. And then we have a philosophical conversation, just like Kathy and I have been having and sharing today. And then the following Monday, you get a recording of it so that you can use it throughout the week. So that is one possibility. And then the book, Your Conscience, has its own website, and it is yourconscience.org.
Oh, okay.
Yourconscience.org.
Okay. So I we need to wrap up. I want to make sure that everyone realizes this is a small book, but it's full of so many gifts for you. This would make a great Christmas gift. If you're a business owner and you're really being pulled in all different ways, this could be a huge, huge help for you right now. So I hope, Leonard, everyone that watches this, we've got quite a few people on right now. I hope everyone shares this with their friends and family and considers getting your book and reads the book. Not don't just buy it.
Can I just add one quick thing?
Please do.
I want to tell everybody out there that I have been a self-employed individual since 1977.
Hmm.
I my profession is I am an art dealer. My wife is an artist, and I have been an art dealer my entire life, even including today. Uh, this teaching is a labor of love. I don't make any money on it. I earn a livelihood through my art business. So I've been an entrepreneur. I know what it is to deal with fear. Mhm. And somebody once told me, a very close colleague and teacher, that my problem is that I considered myself self-employed. And that person told me that he was employed by the self.
Oh,
And being employed by the self means coordinating the ego, senses, and unconscious mind to the perfect wisdom of the higher self,
wow.
reflected by your conscience. And it's not that I'm not aware of fear, but I'm no longer hijacked by the fear. And in fact, the fear can be an asset, because I now know how to transform that debilitating and contractive energy into an expansive energy that will enhance my own health, willpower, and creativity.
Perfect. Perfect. It's potent. That's the thing, is if you can redirect, there's more than enough life force energy for you to do everything that your heart desires if you can release the pain virus, the fire, the fear virus, and reconnect with who you really are. So thank you so much, Leonard. This was such a blessing for me. Thank you so much.
Such a pleasure.
Yes. Okay. Thank you, everyone. Please follow Leonard. You're going to really be glad that you found him. Thank you. Bye bye.